Welcome back to the Hez Project. I'm John Ortelaza, and I have a double feature movie review for you guys today. One of these movies is looked at as one of the most iconic horror classics of all time, and I'm going to be reviewing its sequel that came out in 2019. But first, we're going to dive right into Stanley Kubrick's directed The Shining. Believe it or not, this is the first Stanley Kubrick film that I have watched ever. And up until the last week of 2020, this is the first time I'm watching The Shining. I bought it on 4K and I decided to watch it, and I got some thoughts. Just bear with me, guys. It is my understanding that when you come to my channel, you want to hear my opinion, my thoughts, a unique opinion that may align with yours or may not align with yours. So if you're gonna disagree, be respectful about it down in the comments below, because these are my thoughts, not gospel. With that being said, let's get into The Shining. I was very underwhelmed during this movie. I expected a little bit more out of it. Now, granted, I understand. I'm able to take a step back and realize this film is old. It takes place years, decades before any horror movie I've ever seen. I think this is probably the oldest one I've seen. Well, if you count the original black and white The Day the Earth Stood Still as a horror film, I guess that's the oldest one I've seen. If not, then it's The Shining. Yeah. I like the feel and the tone that Stanley Kubrick presents in this film. Just immediately, the first scene where you see the panning in the Colorado mountains and hills, and they follow Jack and his family's car to the Overlook Hotel, and you got that very creepy, ominous music playing. It's really good. I really love that theme. Like, it's really the only theme to take away, in my opinion, from this film, but it sticks with me. Like, I'm humming it. I was literally just listening to it the entire time I'm setting up my equipment, but yeah, I really thought this had a really eerie, creepy opening, and it left a lot of promise on the table for me. In my opinion, it left a lot of promise, and I was looking forward to the rest of the film. And don't get me wrong, this is a very creepy film, but there's just a few things that didn't work for me, and I think the length of the film, the pacing of the film, really is an issue for me. Say what you will. If you think it's perfect in every single way, dude, feel that way. I'm totally fine if you love this movie, if you want to praise it and all that, go ahead. This is my opinion, and I was underwhelmed by this film. Now, that is not to say that nobody in this film is good by any means. This film is filled with tons of great performances. Jack Nicholson, incredible. I love how creepy and disturbing he can get. That slow turn from the beginning to the end of the film of him is really good. I really appreciated that. I was never bored in this film, to be honest. Being underwhelmed does not mean I was bored. Not at all. No, being bored is a totally different feeling, and I will tell you guys about that in a little bit. Jack Nicholson carries this movie on his back with ease. I'm forgetting the actress who played the mother. I forget her name, but I thought she was really good in this movie too. Probably my second favorite. Just the way she portrays terror and fear when she sees Jack slowly turn throughout the movie. I really appreciated that, and I was watching it through her eyes almost. I felt the terror through her. Although this movie, in my opinion, isn't that scary. It's creepy, but it's not scary. I was not scared at all, really. It takes quite a bit to scare me in movies. Jump scares are like cheap shots, though. If you got some of those, I'm gonna jump like a little like, that's just honest. The child actor who plays Danny, I thought was really good in this movie too. I love his portrayal and just the way he acts. He's very odd at first. You think maybe there's something wrong with him, but no. He's the one that kind of introduces a semi-supernatural element to this film, and this is what I really appreciate about The Shining. They didn't delve into the supernatural element that they teased at, because that's all they did. They just teased at one, but they didn't ever really like play into it and show a bunch of this crazy nonsense. They showed, you know, like some of these iconic scenes of blood filling the hallway, like a whole sea of blood just filling a hallway. The two twins with the light blue dresses at the end of the hallway. Hello, Danny. Like those two. And then the naked lady who's got freaking dirt and dead skin all over her that comes out of the tub. Like, there's so many creepy, really cool things that they just allude to. They don't have to explain anything. I appreciated that. But when it comes down to it, the first 2 acts of the film are setting up all these cool things, and I'm enjoying all of it. I really am. But I honestly think the 3rd act just didn't do it for me. I was very underwhelmed by it. And that may have to do with the fact that there wasn't any grand thing that happened at the end, and I'm not saying that there had to be. They didn't substitute this grand thing with anything interesting, in my opinion. I think the final act of this film, when you see Jack going crazy with the axe, is underwhelming. It is underwhelming, and I had no reaction when he busted through the door, put his face through the hole, and said, "Here's Johnny!" Like, I had no reaction to it. Please, hear me out. That is a very overplayed scene in pop culture everywhere since this movie came out. I've seen multiple iterations of that scene recreated, rehashed into other forms of media and other TV shows and movies. It's played out, and I've seen the clip of him doing it multiple times because I watch YouTube. I'm a human. None of it came to a surprise to me. What did come to a surprise to me was seeing Jack limp around the entire hotel and all outside in the maze trying to find his son, try to kill him for like 5-6 minutes, and he doesn't find him, and then he freezes to death and dies. That screams underwhelming to me, and I wasn't into it towards the end. The first 2/3 of the film are really good, and there's really great acting throughout the entire film. I personally just wasn't sold on the payoff at the end. There really was no payoff in my opinion. It just felt a little bit like a waste of time towards the end. Acting, superb. Directing, really good. Story just wasn't for me. So now that I've talked about the horror classic that everybody knows and loves, and I find just a little disappointing, let's get into the sequel, in which they decided to make an entire 2.5-hour movie about the whole plot with Danny being sort of like a psychic guardian, with the whole red rum being murdered backwards in the mirror, like he kind of foresees these tragedies happening. They made a whole movie about it, so that should be fun, right? Let's start talking about Dr. Snooze! So as I alluded to before, I was not bored during The Shining. I was underwhelmed. I said the majority of that film is very intriguing. Acting is really good. Directing is really good. Cinematography is also excellent as well. This movie, Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan, who's done other horror films. I can't think at the moment if I've seen any of them, but he's now directed this sequel, which is understandably a tall task because, from my understanding, I've heard everywhere that Stephen King, who is the original author of The Shining and Dr. Sleep, he was not a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's film for The Shining because it takes a lot of things out of context and it changes so many things. So not only did Mike Flanagan had to adapt the Dr. Sleep novel, but he had to appease people who loved The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, because he's making a sequel to it. It was a very difficult task, I understand, but man, this was boring. I did not like this movie in the slightest. I don't understand what's up. I don't get it. I've seen a bunch of reviews and a lot of people really enjoy these 2 movies. I'm just not into them. Like The Shining, I can get into, and I can probably sit down and watch it a couple more times. I don't ever want to watch Dr. Sleep ever again. You know, I might watch it one more time in my life, but not anytime soon. Dude, talk about a snooze fest. I was just not invested in anything that was going on in the first hour of this film. They finally have a scene with Ewan McGregor, who plays the older version of Danny Torrance from the original film. He's at a park bench with this young girl who's also kind of got a bit of a shine to her, and that was a cool part of this film. In this scene, they started finally telling us what the hell is going on, saying, oh, some people have shine to them, and he calls it The Shining, but he used to call it his imaginary friend Tony, which when he used to do this and talk to his little finger. That was weird, but to see that they kind of delve deep into the whole lore of The Shining and whatnot. That was really cool. And that scene that came an hour and 7 minutes into the film really sold me on the concept of Dr. Sleep and what is to come in the second half of the film. I just felt like there was a lot of meandering and just milling about. I just wasn't invested into it, man. I was thoroughly bored throughout the first hour of this film. I really thought that park bench scene was going to solidify the second half as something more interesting and more compelling, similar to the first 2/3 of The Shining, but not really. I was thoroughly bored still. Just wasn't clinging on to anything. Nothing was grabbing me. There was just a lot of empty scenes. The movie just has this dark look to it, and dude, it was putting me to sleep. This whole plot with Rebecca Ferguson's character, she wants to take the shine away from people. They kill people who have these powers. Then they shape-shifting, it looks like their body has this weird special effect where they're changing. You can see their muscle outline, then their skeleton. It's weird. It looks kind of cool, I'm not gonna lie, but then they die, they turn into smoke, and then Rebecca Ferguson and her people just snort their ashes. There's a lot of odd things that happen, and granted, they could come off really cool if the movie took time to explain something. There's probably 2 exposition scenes, but it's not enough to explain everything that's happening in this film. I feel like that there was just too much on the table for this film, and they told us nothing, and it left me just not enjoying myself. It just felt like Rebecca Ferguson's gang just wanted to get high off of people's souls. That's not appealing to me. I wanted to see a continuation of Danny's story, and yes, we did get that, but I don't know. I just wasn't into it. Maybe that Shining scene from Ready Player One, directed by Steven Spielberg, maybe that scene kind of ruined the homage that Dr. Sleep did at the end of their movie, because that's the same thing they do in Ready Player One. They go to the Overlook Hotel, they go through the hallways, they go through the red blood, they see the twins, and then they show the old lady from the tub. They do all of that. They go through the whole thing in that film, and that was honestly the first time I've seen anything of The Shining, really. And obviously all the scenes of Johnny sticking his head through the door. But I honestly think that homage from Ready Player One ruined the finale of Dr. Sleep to me, so that will always be unfair to judge. I expected a little more out of the film, and to see where they went, how long they went, without impressing me in the slightest, was very underwhelming, very disappointing, leaps and bounds more disappointing than The Shining. I can enjoy and appreciate The Shining. There was a lot of craft and love that went into that film, and also in this film, because the acting in this one is very top-notch. Ewan McGregor, always a pleasure to see on screen, but I don't know if it was the direction or just the overall story and premise of Dr. Sleep. Maybe this was more faithful to the book. If not, then I don't know. Maybe Dr. Sleep is just not a story for me, because it was boring. Just a reminder, guys, be respectful to one another's opinions, because at the end of the day, these are just opinions. Subjective, personal opinions. Comment down below, let me know what you think of both films, The Shining and Dr. Sleep. Which one's your favorite? Let me know down below, and be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and be sure to hit that notify bell so you don't miss a single video from the Hess Project. I'm going to be covering WandaVision, the new Disney Plus Marvel series. It's going to be dropping on January 15th. There's a rumor it might be a little longer than we thought, so be sure to stick around, guys, because there's more to come.